All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the breakdown. We've got my co-host Shane Isler, and we've got one of my mentors and guest, Malcolm Sinclair-Park, today. Pretty excited to introduce him. He runs a magazine called Living Well, Living Green, and he also runs a media company called Sinclair Media Solutions. So I guess we'll just get right into it. So right away, I just want to get into some context for everyone so they kind of know how me and Malcolm have a relationship. So our mutual friends, one of my very close friends at the time, actually I was working a blue collar job with him, Morgan, someone that's almost, it wasn't his biological mom, but very much like a mom to him, Billy, who's a mutual friend of me and Malcolm's. She was having her citizenship party. Yeah. So we were celebrating, where's she from?
Germany.
Yeah. Okay, correct. And so we actually had met at that party. Everyone's having a great time, eating food. And then I think Malcolm really sparked something in me. I was like, whoa, this guy's got some business knowledge. And, right now I was just slowly pivoting away from that blue collar work. I realized, construction, this blue collar stuff, it's not going to be for me forever. And I'm going to need to learn business and sales and, a business plan from someone. Here's someone that's just presenting and he's just getting so excited. I was like, let me take your number down. And then I quickly swung a little meeting together with one of my other mentors, Richard, and then me, Dezol, Malcolm got together, and then kind of from there, it skyrocketed. And we got very close, coffee meetings all the time, networking events all the time. And when I didn't have the money, Malcolm would cover my networking events, same thing with Lalith. I really didn't have much money starting, and they would always support me and help me get into this world when I really had nothing and I had no knowledge. So I just want to ask you, what were your first impressions of me when you first met me? Same thing that I asked Lalith, what were you thinking? Super curious kid. I was very excited to meet you guys. And so what was that like from your perspective? Like, oh, maybe this guy's a student of business kind of coming into my life. So yeah.
Well, I think when I saw you, what impressed me the most was your curiosity and also your eagerness to learn and the questions. What impresses me most about people sometimes is not what they tell me, it's about what they ask. Because I think there's a lot that becomes built into a question. You have to think to formulate a question, and when you formulate that question, it's because of that curiosity and I guess I just saw in you I thought, wow, maybe I saw a younger version of myself, and I thought, wow, there was a bit of nostalgia there for me. So it was, yeah.
That's a great segue, because I was already going to get into, you've been an entrepreneur for almost how many years?
A while.
Well, I won't say how many, but a lot of years.
Yeah.
And, you never worked a regular job, only one ever, that which we talked about during COVID. You took a little pivot and you wanted to just try something new.
Yeah.
But growing up, I want to get into the flower business or the floral business.
Yeah.
That was your very first business? Yeah. And then that kind of scaled a little bit. So let's get into that. How did you get into that, and how did that whole thing start? Because you almost never worked a job growing up until, later down in life.
Right. I definitely was a serial entrepreneur from probably about 12 or 13, right? Trying all different kinds of things. And I actually started out making candles in my parents' basement. So, and I started a company called The Chandler, which is one who deals in candles and candle making supplies.
Oh, I love that.
And some friends of mine we were doing flea markets, and they were selling flowers, and their flowers were selling more than my candles. And I'm going, okay, I need to pivot here. And so I didn't use their flowers, but I found some other forms of flowers, and people, I guess what I was doing was looking to meet where the customer demand was. So that led me into, when I was about 17, getting a contract from a company in Toronto for these handmade ribbon roses, which I ended up getting a contract from this company in Toronto for 3,000 dozen. And so I spent the whole summer, we created a production line. I had hired some high school student friends of mine. One cut the ribbon, one put it on the wire, and I tried to teach people how to make them, but anyway, I ended up 10 hours a day rolling these things and pitching them. Anyway, at the end of the day, after my fingers were bleeding, from making these all summer, I thought, and no more of this,
This isn't gonna work.
Yeah, and so then I got into importing from mainland China, and so I started sending out at that time letters because there was no internet, and getting samples from all these factories in Hong Kong, and was exciting, getting and then placing some orders I started traveling, hitting the road in Northern Ontario. I came all the way down to Ottawa. I went out to Kenora. I had a huge territory, and I sold it to gift shops and flower shops, and I did that for probably over 20 years, and So
I guess the only other question is, when did you get into the real estate from the flowers? And what introduced the real estate? I know obviously we had spoke that like you got your own home, and that was just just to have own home. But then at some point when you had got your own place, you thought to myself, well, actually this is a great lucrative way, because I think you were renting out your basement or something,
right, yeah.
And then you're like, well, actually, if I can do this with one, then why can't I replicate
well, when I first got married, we lived in a house that lent itself very well, that the basement could be turned into like a 2-bedroom apartment.
Correct.
And so we fixed that up and rented it out, and the rent from that basically paid the mortgage. And then within 6 to 8 months, I bought another place, and I just sort of rolling.
Rinse, repeat. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the conditions to get into the market were a lot different than they are. I don't think I could have duplicated that today.
Yeah.
So the situation, was.
But I mean, you capitalized on momentum. You saw there was a gap, and you took it. And so,
but isn't that what entrepreneurship is?
Correct, it is.
Entrepreneurship 100%. Is seeing opportunity in everyday things, and looking for where you can. I don't want to say capitalize, but you might look at it and go, oh, there's an opportunity there. Do I see? And then you might say, nah, it's not for me. Yeah. And it can be a curse as well as an entrepreneur, because you look at everything as even maybe a hobby, as a potential business. And so you have to have that balance of deciding what are you going to do just for pleasure, and what is going to bring you an income.
I've definitely struggled with like shiny object syndrome in the entrepreneurship world, where I'm oh damn this idea, damn this idea. And then I'm spreading myself so thin, I'm like, okay, I'm exhausted. Wait, and I don't even know what idea I like the most. So that's definitely a problem I've come up with.
And I think most entrepreneurs, like I'm self-diagnosed attention deficit, because like definitely I see something shiny over there, and but that's not a bad thing. And I think people who have been diagnosed with attention deficit should not look at it as a curse.
Correct.
It's actually a blessing, because some of the most creative people out there, and think about it, attention deficit, all it's saying is that you have a deficit for focusing on one thing, but that's a skill you can learn. You can build that into your toolbox. You can learn how to focus. So having multiple ideas is much better than having no ideas. So if you can learn to cherry pick the ideas that may or might not work for you, then then you're what a lot of people see maybe as a foible. We were talking about that word earlier. Is or as a roadblock. I don't see anything as a roadblock. I see it as
like a pivot station.
Or not to stop you, but learn how you can either go over, under, or around.
Well, either your business grows or you grow, right? So
well said. Business fails, then you grow, and if the business succeeds,
exactly right. Everything has a lesson in it, right? And it's funny. There's a statement that what you just said earlier reminded me of, and some people define luck as when preparation meets opportunity. And I think, adjacently, opportunity is when a visionary is presented with a cue. And so I think what's cool is, to your point about the attention deficit, you just get more cues than anyone else, right? So there's a different advantage that comes with it. I just thought that was a cool perspective.
Yeah, and I guess if you can decipher how not to let it drive you crazy, because I know like a lot of people will say, oh, you know, the noise in my head, and you know, the thing is like, not to sound like there are multiple voices in our head, and we need to just, and I'm not saying that from a psychotic point of view. What I'm saying is because I often said to people, I'm either psychic or psychotic, or maybe a little bit of both, you know? And so that insanity is what really can bring us to the forefront of ingenuity, I guess, you know?
I think a lot of entrepreneurs do feel crazy, unheard, or they can't relate to a lot of people. So then when they get in the room with other very multifaceted entrepreneurs, even if they're failures, they feel like they're at home. And that's definitely how I feel around other entrepreneurs, because it's like, if you're in a room with a bunch of 9-to-5 style people, which again, there's nothing wrong with this, but you might not relate or understand their way of thinking, because it is more 2D. It is more, I'm happy, I'm getting my paycheck, I love my job, I'm sticking to this. As an entrepreneur, there is no roadmap, there is no rubric. It is, oh my God, it's a journey, it's a maze, it's a labyrinth constantly. So I just wanted to quickly wrap it up before because it was an open-ended question. I was like, how many years were you in the real estate before you pivoted to magazine and your media company?
I probably did, I actually took my real estate license at one point, and then I sold for a couple of years, and then I realized that wasn't the end that I really wanted to be on. I wanted to be on the investing side of it. And I probably did that for about 10 or 15 years. And and I mean, the magazine sort of came out of, again, one of those trajectories, or if you look at the Queensway and you take a side ramp, it was definitely a side ramp. And when I look back on it now, I had a few people say to me, like, why did you get into the publishing industry? And it's probably because I knew nothing about it. And I think that's another thing about being an entrepreneur, is you're willing to try businesses or ventures that you know nothing about, because anyone can learn any industry. It's no industry is off limits for anyone. So it's just about, I think that the thing about an entrepreneur, if I were to look at a profile and a makeup of what an entrepreneur is, they're gutsy, they're sometimes maybe a little unrealistic. But to your point earlier, when you said about being in a room of people that were failures, I don't see anyone, and I know you didn't mean that in the sense, but I've decided that there are no failures and that there are no mistakes. I think the word mistake could be reframed as teacher, because if you never make a mistake, or if you never fail, you don't learn anything, because it's in those mistakes and failures that redirect you. If you continue making the mistakes, then there's a problem. But if you learn from those mistakes, new opportunities arise, and you're able to see new horizons, I guess.
I just quickly want to ask, where were you born and raised, and then when did you come to Ottawa? Because you have not been here your entire life.
I was born in Northern Ontario in a little town called North Bay. And so I spent most of my life in Northern Ontario, and I've been in Ottawa for about 10 years. So and I love Ottawa. It's for someone from Northern Ontario, it's a perfect transition, because I don't think I could ever go to a big city. It's a
right
nice
in between.
It's nice.
It's a big small town.
It's a big small town.
Similar to, North Bay was even bigger. I didn't have a Tim Hortons or a stoplight or anything in my town.
Small town.
And Ottawa was a good transition.
Where were you from?
To a small town called Trochu. It's near Calgary, Alberta. Nowhere near here. And so I sort of had a pivot. I went Trochu to Calgary to Ottawa. But Ottawa is, I don't know, I'm in my neighborhood. Everything's close. People have mixed thoughts on with how they feel about the city. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of underrated things about Ottawa. It does have a nice balance. You go to Toronto or a few other big cities, it's like overwhelming. It is super overwhelming. Ottawa, You drive 20 minutes. Barrhaven is a pretty low key, like, even though it seems grand, you know, people call it the richer neighborhood, but really there's still trees, there's parks everywhere in Ottawa. We're not a disgustingly industrial city, which a lot of cities it turns into like that.
Yeah, we're 20 minutes from the Gatineaus, from a lake, and you know, I downhill ski, so we're 20 minutes from Camp Fortune in the wintertime. So so it's got all the amenities, you know, and you know, getting back to, I really see it as a great place for building community, and I also believe in the boomerang effect, because I've heard a lot of people say that, well, you know, even if you go to Toronto, you know, they say, well, Toronto's so cold. I believe in the boomerang effect, that you get back what you send out. And I don't see any city or any place that you can't, if you send out good vibrations, if you send out good energy, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be received, because people are people no matter where they live. They want connection, they want to talk to people. But with that being said, I love Ottawa.
I'm grateful to have met you as well, and Louth. And I mean, all the mentors I've met here, for me, it's always been like, wow, what a village, what an accepting city. I've met hundreds of amazing mentors, in my opinion, which I don't know, obviously in other cities, I'm sure there's that opportunity, but it's something about the willingness for someone to quickly meet me and then meet me for coffee and then keep helping me and then keep being in my life and then bring me these people. It's like, you, Louth, Richard, you guys never hesitated to just uplift me. You guys never hesitated. And that's something I recognize with a lot of people in Ottawa is, you know, they're not always bigging themselves. They're not always like upping their chest. They're not always thinking, oh, I'm better than everyone, which when you get in that hustler mentality in a few different cities, I'm sure it's less common to find people like that. I wanted to quickly get into, because I want to segue into it. You kind of touched on it very quickly with the vibrations, the 10 levels of consciousness. I love this. We've talked about this for literally hundreds of hours, I feel like. But it's always a concept where, actually, when we first met, I feel like I was a lot lower on the consciousness scale. And now, since we've talked about it a lot, and I've grown a lot as a person, especially since we first met, we've even talked about how I act differently, I walk differently, and I feel a lot different. I feel like I've gotten a lot higher on the scale, and now you can describe it so people can understand what I'm talking about.
So just a correction. I don't think you were low on the consciousness scale. I think you were low on the vibrational scale. I think you were just vibrating at a lower energy level, and that could have been situational. It could have been, you know, the state you were in at that time, and maybe that's another one of the reasons why I was so strongly drawn to our conversation when we had. Not that I wanted to save you in any way, but I think that I saw potential.
Correct.
I saw great potential.
Untapped potential.
Untapped potential, and that's all any of us are, is untapped potential. Yeah, so I mean, I became fascinated with a book called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, where he was a kinesiologist and he calibrated all the levels of consciousness. He did it as an energy level. He did it as an emotional level. And then he gave them each a conscious. He started off at the lowest, which was despair. And so despair is probably when we're even lower than depression. It's like despair is the bottom of it. He calibrated that at 25. So when you're in despair, there's only one way to go, and it's up. And anger is above despair. It's a little bit higher, because at least when you're in anger, you're willing to roll down the window and yell at someone and give them the finger or whatever, because you're I'm not saying it's a place you want to stay. But it's
you're experiencing emotion.
You're experiencing emotion. Exactly.
You're not numb.
Yeah. And so then he goes anger, and he moves all the way up. I can't remember all of them. Pride. What really got me was courage. He said that most of North America is vibrating at 180. Courage is 200. What he calibrated as a number of 200. And he said most of North America is vibrating below 200, which is a 180, which is a consciousness that is an unaware. So you're unaware of other people's basic feelings. The compassion really doesn't exist. It's a very self-serving energy. And it's really interesting that he pinned North America, because if you look at a lot of Eastern cultures who have been vibrating at a much higher energy level for thousands of years, you see that it's endemic even in their culture, the food they eat and whatnot. So what got me was, if at 200, I saw 200 as the level where we almost have the courage to look within. And when you become introspective, that's when you have the courage to look at yourself. Because we don't need to look at anything else in this world, because it's us that is driving the boat or driving the bus. And so when we get to courage and we have the willingness to look in, because it does take courage to look in the mirror. And you know, I mean, I don't know if, I'm sure most of us have done that, you know, when we're either shaving or whatever we do in the morning, when we're looking in the mirror, we see ourselves, but we don't really see ourselves.
Correct.
But to look into our eyes in depth, and actually, you know, like those Russian dolls where you
nesting dolls.
Nesting dolls,
kind
where
you
look into your eyes, and then you look into your eyes, and then you see another level and another level and another level and another. That's when you really, it can almost be very scary, a scary place to be. And so I saw that the courage was what I call the tipping point.
Yeah.
And on the other side, Dr. Hawkins calibrated, he said it's willingness, what is it? I'm having a brain fart here, so we'll have to probably...
Yes.
Yeah. So willingness, acceptance, there's another one, and then love, joy, bliss, and isness. So the book that I've been writing is called The Business of Isness. And that's where I got that whole concept, because at isness, your vibration is just so high that the things that we consider everyday worries are inconsequential. So he calibrated like Christ and Gandhi in the 400s, because that's love. And so when you get to the vibration of love, that's where you have compassion for others. But interestingly enough, you have to have the willingness and then the acceptance. So once you have the willingness to look at yourself, then you come to accept yourself. That's the path of the road to moving up to higher consciousness levels. And what I've realized is that consciousness has nothing to do with your intelligence.
Correct.
Because we see many intelligent people who are vibrating at very low energy levels. So and that's where it also led me into doing a lot of work on ego development, looking at the 9 stages of ego development, understanding that at the end of the day, when we understand our ego and we understand what drives us, we can pole vault our growth. Because once we understand that, and as an entrepreneur, when you can understand who you really are, and that's basically what the business of business is that balance sheet of being able to take a look at us as an individual. What are your assets? What are your liabilities? What are your retained earnings? So what on the balance sheet do you bring to the table in life? What at the end of the day are you going to leave this world? What do you see as your liabilities? What are your limiting beliefs? What cultural beliefs are holding you back? When we can break that all down, I love your name, your podcast, is when you can break that down to the quintessential functioning of who we are as a human being. It sets us free to soar, I believe. Anyway, so that book, The Business of Business, is in the works, and I need to get it finished. But I think why I said the business of business is because everyone understands that concept of business, you know. And I guess what my question out of it all is, what is your bottom line as a human being? And especially in the times that we live in right now, where we look at climate change, we look at the fundamental way that we're destroying our planet.
Yes.
And we need to have a bit more of a conscience as to what the bottom line that we're going to leave behind is.
What I like about it is it reminds me of the two Russ books, like The Artist. I read his two books, and really, really interesting guy, because he does the full scope of his work, where he mix, masters, record, and then he's constantly always ranting to people online. No, you don't need a deal. Everything can be done by yourself. You want to keep your masters. You want to keep your own profits. And in his two books, they're really simple and sweet, and I recommend everyone to read them. But my favorite part of it is he always says, get out of your own way. Get out of your own way. It's not someone else. It's not the world's problems. It's not, everyone wants to put another object and say, oh no, this is my problem. This is why I can't do this. But if you actually, your dream is here, you're in the way, remove yourself and actually figure out, what are the problems that I'm bringing into my own life? That's when you actually achieve true success, true peace, true whatever you want in general is you're standing in the way of it, not someone else. So
the power goes where the finger points, right?
Right. And it should always be pointing back to yourself, because at the end of the day, I can't remember if it was Shakespeare or who said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And so when we don't truly take stock of who we are, and in this selfie society where we're so enthralled with how we look and how we present, really, that's all such superficial,
instant gratification type stuff.
Absolutely. And yes, we arrive here in this packaging of flesh and bone and blood, but the true vibration and the essence of who we are is, I don't know if that's what a soul is. I'm not sure, but I
agree. It's not our physical body could never explain how conscious and how deep and how deep we are, because you can just easily notice that inside there's a certain level of consciousness that you can experience there. I kind of, like me and Dezol talked with this, my business partner, which is a lot of people are on autopilot. They're just, oh damn, I have this problem. Oh damn, I'm working my 9 to 5, and it's autopilot. There's never a self-thought. There's never a, oh wait, is this okay? Or, oh, do I have morals? Or what am I thinking? And once you kind of pause your autopilot and you really start to reflect, for me personally, a lot of stuff in my life has changed by just saying, wait, let me stop just reacting to stuff and let me actually anticipate what my emotions are, anticipate what am I doing and why am I doing it. And then I feel like I started to get a lot happier and at least at peace with myself, because I stopped questioning, and beating myself up over stuff that doesn't really matter. That's one of the main things. A lot of times we're constantly bullying ourselves and beating ourselves up more than the people around us, because we think, oh man, I created all this problems for myself. I did all this. But if we can kind of switch our perspective to say, okay, I did this stuff in the past. I was like this, but now I'm going to acknowledge that in order to move on. So it is acceptance and then willingness, and then you kind of move forward.
And it's self-actualization, right?
Correct.
It's also, and that's the only way we're going to move away from self-sabotage is by self-actualizing. And that led me to also delve into a whole group of theories on spiral dynamics. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Never.
Which is the evolution of societies. And we look at societies and they've color coded it. I'm not going to get into that too deeply, but what I'm saying is that you talk about getting out of your own way.
Yes.
Getting out of your own way can only happen when you know what the way that you need to, so when you know who you are, you have a better direction of how to get out of your own way.
Correct.
So how do you do that, if you don't mind me asking? When you're looking to self-reflect, do you journal? Do you look in the mirror? What sort of strategies, if I'm listening to this and say, cool, my name's Shane, I'm going to start self-reflecting, where do I start?
Yeah, well, journaling is probably a really good way. It's something that I don't do a lot of, and I should do more of. So kudos to you for bringing that up, because I think I need to do more of that. I think meditation, is the best way, and I don't mean, people have this and Lalith will be the first to tell you that that the concept of meditation, you don't need to be sitting somewhere with your legs crossed. You can meditate in a parking lot in your car.
It's not all kumbaya like how we picture it. It's
just a pause, a pause to self-reflect. And I think the self-reflection is being honest with yourself.
I like that.
I love what Eckhart Tolle said about being the observer of the observed. So, and think about that for a minute. The observer of the observed. So if we're observing what's going on right now, is there a way that we can get like a lens behind us to observe almost like a drone? And I think when we can not teleport, but drone above any situation. And that's where before we started talking about chess.
Correct.
And I was talking about, are you the player or are you the piece on the board? And the key is probably the only way that you can move the chess piece is to become the player. But in order to have a strategic move on the board, you need to get up above the board and look at the board. And that's probably in a meditation session is where we become the observer of the observed. And we almost look over on a sort of like a droning aspect of seeing what's happened. If you get a bird's eye view of the situation, you have a much better way of saying, okay, these are the players on the chessboard, because life is like a chessboard, isn't it?
Correct.
All of the people who come into our life are players. And how do we move strategically to make the best situation or outcome? So
really easy perspective for someone who's not grasping this concept is most of us have played a video game where the camera's right here. It's a third person perspective and you're actually playing this character. Well, guess what? That's also real life. We're playing the main character, which is ourselves. And you can either be the villain or you can be the hero of your story. And if you're not actually acknowledging yourself from that standpoint, then you're probably just going to be on autopilot the rest of your life. So
I like that, Jordan.
Yeah, let's take a step back and think, oh, damn, who's watching me? Actually, it's myself watching me, and I'm the one experiencing. I like how even Joe Rogan says it. He says, like, be the hero in the movie that you dream and that you watch and you dream of being. Just be him. Don't, oh, well, maybe if I complete this project, or maybe, no, just acknowledge yourself as, oh, no, I'm the main character of the movie and I'm about to pursue something that's phenomenal. And that's how I always try to view myself is, oh, I'm going to do great things. Now let me reverse engineer that. Not, oh, I'm going to do great things later and then I'll be acknowledged. Well, no, acknowledge yourself and then you're going to get there a lot faster.
And, that's the whole thing about mentorship, right? Is, you show gratitude for your mentors, but I also see a reciprocation because no matter, yes, you're giving, you're sharing or you're handing the torch or the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years, but that reciprocation also comes back. So, it's not a one-way street with mentorship. I get as much back from the two of you as you see that I would give back to you.
Great minds think alike. Lal just said that. And it's the reverse of energy. We're gaining experience and you're gaining another experience from
absolutely
us,
and gaining a different
ingenuity,
perspective.
our innovation is different.
Absolutely.
So, what's so fun? Just an observation that I made. As we started talking about mentorship, I work in sales, and so I look at body language a lot, and I could see everything in you perk up a little bit. So I can tell that that's something that's important to you. And it's just cool to see how your body language has changed. I can tell it's something that means a lot.
Oh, it does. It does. Because I'll tell you, Jordan is the one that made me see that. Because a year ago when he was sort of job shadowing me, coming around when we did, so we would go from place to place doing cold calls. He said to me, well, thank you for, I can't believe you're sharing your knowledge. And I'm going, what do you mean? Thank you. He made me see that I actually had value in all of the years that I had accumulated of experience. I didn't really, to be honest with you, see that accumulated knowledge was of value to transcend, and so that's a gift in itself, is that that you made me see some value in me that I wasn't aware of in myself. And so that's again why, so for mentorship for me, that if I can give back, that's an intrinsic reward that you can't put a dollar value on.
No.
Yeah, it's like Lyle said, it's dividends that you're not going to get in money, but be something that's greater than money.
Oh,
you're
greater
getting
than money.
dividends by watching me now go run all these companies. Then I'm going to come back to you. Hey, Malcolm, look, remember when we just started something? And now I'm running all this AI company. I'm doing all this. That's a dividend that I'm always going to pay back to you because I want to, not because there's any kind of transactional exchange that we need.
And there's no greater indication of trust than someone that you mentor with, right? And 100%. I think something else that's really cool about mentorship, and I was sort of pondering this while both of you were talking, but when you mentor with someone, sometimes the recipient of the relationship isn't the mentee but the mentor. And one of the greatest compliments that you can give, think back to a moment for just a second where you have told someone to do something and they've actually said, okay, Malcolm, I believe it, I trust your advice, I'm going to take it.
They followed through.
One step further, they do it and they get the reaction or the outcome that you said would happen. How good does that feel?
That's got to be interesting.
It's so good. And a lot of people don't get to do that. And I think a lot of the gratitude that comes with wisdom and with experience and age is being able to give that back. And it's so cool that you were able to recognize that, because it only gets bigger as you get older, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Jordan and I have we have had some long drives, road trips where we've like 4 hours goes by so fast because it's a non-stop constant interaction. And when you see the brainstorming that can go on, there's no better way to lift your spirits or to I say it's just like it gets your mojo going. You just like it raises your vibration is what it does. It really does.
Everyone's got to go look into Austin Powers, who's too young to understand that reference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A lot of people are like, "What's mojo?"
Mojo. Oh yeah, mojo.
Go look into it for a second, and you'll get it.
Yeah.
That is too funny. I want to pivot on something else, and this sort of falls along the theme of mentorship, but a lot of mentorship comes from the passing on of knowledge. And when you look back at why people used to write books, it was the pass on of knowledge. I have finished my career, I've had success, I'm going to put this knowledge into a book so someone else can read it and take that knowledge. In terms of where you're at right now, I guess an interesting question that I had is some of the failures you've experienced. And you're welcome to go as deep or as superficial as you want, and I have a feeling you're going to have a great answer for this. But as you go through business, everybody gets scars. And you can either get the scar yourself or learn from someone else. That's where mentorship comes in. But yourself, there's been a lot of lessons that you've been able to pass on. Where does that come from? Where are the scars from? Tell me some of the things that maybe you've fallen flat on your face on, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, well, yeah, I've got lots of scars. And I think that, anyone, I mean, I'm sure some people go through life and business without any scars, and I envy them, sometimes. But I guess, the thing is we all have scars. It's how long do you lick those wounds, and how long do you tend to them, or at what point do you? Because as human beings, we're going to have a period where if you've got knocked flat on your face,
want to sulk. Yeah.
You have to sit in the mud. And it's really funny because I had a friend who came to me the other day, and they were having some. They had an argument with their mother, and they were talking about it. And I said, well, you know what? Sit in the mud. I said, sit in that feeling. I know it's yucky for a while, but sit in it, but don't become it. And I think that that's the key. If we're going to learn from our mistakes, our failures, and our scars, we don't need to wear the scar on open view. We can take the scar, learn from it, but we don't need to become the scar. And if we become the scar, that disables us from moving forward. And you know what? I always say that if you never fail, you never learn. And so sometimes I've welcomed some of those things because they've made me the person that I am today. And believe me, I've had, not just in business, but personally, I've been at despair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not a nice place to be. And for me, I guess at despair, you have a couple of choices. You either stay there or leave, or you dig deep and you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you move on. And that's what I had to do. I had to dig down deep. And sometimes that is the most difficult thing to do, to dig down and find that wherewithal within you, But we all have it within us. And kind
of got to let that anchor go. It's
yes,
like, damn, it's
exactly.
Like, oh, look at all these things. And like you said, like if you just kind of, the way you view yourself is by viewing yourself as your failures, then that anchor is just going to hold you down forever. So at what point do you just say, you know what? I understand what is causing me pain. I understand why I'm so low. Now it's time to move on and pivot.
Yeah, and to be human is to fail, right?
Yeah.
It's if you're going to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to stay safe, and I mean, no disrespect to anybody who wants to stay safe and just have the. And again, I'm not even trying to pick at people who have like the 9 to that's great because so I wish sometimes I'd followed that path, but you get scarred when you put yourself out there. It's just inevitable. You're gonna get bitten.
Even as an artist, I experienced that a lot.
Do you want to move the mic just a teeny bit?
Sure, for sure.
Even if you scooch, that might be better. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Just so that it's not over here.
Okay, can you hear okay there?
Yeah, no, everything's good.
Okay.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to add something else to this. And I forget what it was.
Your question?
Yeah, no, it was great. I want to add something else to this. And this is something that I stole. I'm going to bring this up a lot. Alex Hormozy says this all the time.
We love Alex Hormozy on this podcast.
Oh, yeah, he's great,
We love Alex Hormozy.
Yeah.
We do. And more trust in that guy than anyone I've ever met. And I've never met him.
He's so profound, right?
Like, he's very profound.
Yeah.
And so I think something that's been really cool for me as a internal thought process, and this may not work for everyone, but if someone was looking for, okay, I'm listening to this advice, I need something tactical, what can I try? What can I do? How does this work for me? Something I've done, and I want to share this because it's been very impactful for me, is the concept of like ... and that's okay. And so what does that look like? Well, I made a mistake ... and that's okay. I lost it all in a business I put in ... and that's okay, because you always learn more than you earn, right? And I think this ... and that's okay process is huge. And putting something out there, my girlfriend right now is writing in the middle of her PhD, and doing a PhD, what I have come to learn, it's not something I could ever do. It's quite literally getting hit in the face over and over again and continuing to get back up again. And it's something that I've shared with her, and it's ... you messed up, and that's okay, because as long as you still wake up, you start at zero every day. And it's just been a great thought process for me.
And that's I've never heard that ... and that's okay. And those words "and that's okay" are probably the hardest words to say, because
to believe,
because we do wake up every morning with a new day. And thank you. I mean, I'm gonna use that as my tagline. That's okay.
Put it in the magazine.
And that's
you can
okay.
Call me if you want. No.
Okay. From the famous words of Shane. Isler.
I want to give a similar wrap up question to Malcolm. I just want to quickly open the floor to this guy. If he has any last questions you wanted to ask him before we kind of start wrapping up here. Do you have anything else?
Only other thing, yes.
Yeah.
I have a love for public speaking, and I know you spent about 10 years in Toastmasters. And I just wanted to ask about your relationship with public speaking and some of the lessons you brought forward from that, and how it's had ripple effects on sort of your life and your success.
Well, actually, I realized that the whole evolution of the book, The Business of Business, started when my first foray into public speaking was with a group called it was Talk something, and I competed in Northern Ontario and I won. And then I went to Detroit, Michigan, and I won there. And then I went on a cruise. Wow. And the whole concept was about the mask we wear and getting real. And so it was like a 90-second, 2-minute speech, and it was all about, you know, catching the audience attention. But when I look back now, I actually read the text that I had in that speech, and my message was even the same, even though I didn't know it back then, that what I want to transpose with the book is about getting real, about removing the mask that we all wear, and understanding that ego development of that, you know, raising to where we are on the ego scale. And so anyway, getting, you know, answering your question is that I think that we're all public speaking if we're in sales all the time. We're all, as I would say, on. You know, when we're meeting a client, when we're talking to people, we're on stage. We're, you know, in sociology, there's a term, and I did my degree was in sociology. So we learned what was Irving Goffman had a theory called front stage, backstage. And I love that because he even looked at how as people, we respond differently to people in uniform. So if you were to put on a police uniform and come in, or you were to put on a paramedic uniform, or our response to different people becomes different. And he used an analogy of the car salesman, you know, front stage, backstage. So the car salesman comes out, meets the client in, you know, in the either in the parking lot or in the showroom, schmoozes, and then might go back into the coffee room and you know, make some berated comment about the client that they just made. And that's pure front stage, backstage that we are on when we're in front of the client. I think the key is, and that's what I think public speaking has helped me with, is learning to be as authentic as possible at all times. Because I've often said to people, what you see is what you get. So Correct. With me, I hope that I am the same when I'm laughing with my friends at the bar, having a beer, or, I mean, of course, there'll be some decorum if you're in a professional situation. But at the end of the day,
the same.
I always want to be at the core the same authentic and delivering. I don't want to be front stage, backstage.
Correct. One thing that I always, it just reminds me of a lot, and it's kind of like the very like Tony Robbins scenario, which is like, you know, he grew up, his mom was a heroin addict. He went through all this crazy stuff. And then he said he started to study psychology so that he could handle his mom. And I think it wouldn't be so violent around his siblings. And I always think, even when I'm with you a lot, is, damn, how does he have so much compassion for other people? And what I've realized is the people who are generally, what I've experienced in my life, the most compassionate for others are the people who have seen the most pain and the most failures. Those are the people who really like, oh, Shane, you're an amazing guy. Oh, Malcolm, I love you so much. Those people who are so giving, it's usually because they've experienced something where they don't want to give that reflection. They're looking to have a different reflection. They've gotten so much internal battles that they realize the most simplistic, beautiful thing is actually to just give to others. So the last question I want to give you, as we wrap up here, is very similar to what I gave Lalith, because you guys have brought in so much value to my life, and I want to share this knowledge with other people who, what I said is I've kind of, you know, hit a few, you know, stepping stones that I'm proud of, and I feel like I've really changed myself. But for the people who haven't even stepped on a single stone, the people who are probably depressed right now, who don't know what they want, don't know what they're seeking, and they don't know what direction to take, you know, what would you tell your younger self, or some of the young people that are watching this podcast? They don't know what to do. They don't have a direction, Malcolm. So what would you tell them if you could in, as short a sentence as possible, but feel free to go as long as you want, but try to summarize it and just say, what should they study? What should they look into? What's a step that they can take that's quick, that is effective now, that they can move forward, that you would maybe tell your younger self the same thing right now? So,
well, I think the first thing is that to remember that life is a series of up and downs. There is, getting anywhere. Life is not a straight line. And so as much as we're going to have highs, we're going to have lows. We don't want to stay in the lows too long.
Yeah.
And I suppose in order to get out of the lows, we need to surround ourselves with people that we trust, that we know that care about us, that love us. And I think basically surrounding yourself with positive key people. As human beings, as I said, we're going to hit lows.
Yeah.
And the highs are great.
They feel great.
They feel great, and it's like a drug, right?
Yeah.
It's when you're flying high, and can you maintain that? I suppose you can. But it's I guess it's like surfing. I've never surfed, and I've never snowboarded, but I've skied. And so I think managing life is like if you're on a surfboard or a snowboard or on skis, it's slippery underneath, right? And sometimes how do you control that? And that's what life is, because there's so many factors out there that are beyond our control. So it's riding the wave. Life is a wave. And so riding that wave is also being able to look over your shoulder and anticipate, because you used that word earlier about learning to anticipate when the next wave or tsunami is coming. And it's not that you want to be in constant anxiety, but realize that as things go, there's probably a wave coming. And so enjoy the wave while you're riding it, but anticipate the next wave, because that's what life is all about, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Malcolm. We really appreciate your time. I'm really glad you were here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Words? Yeah.
I have one last thing I want to just compliment you on, and I'll leave you with some warm and fuzzies. We've only ever had a chance to meet a couple times, but in a professional setting, never quite as intimate as a podcast. And something that I didn't know about you was just how extensive your vocabulary is.
Oh my God.
And
it's amazing.
It's just something that I noticed going through here, and I can tell that you've either been intentional with that or somehow some part of your brain just clicks with it. But I just wanted to say that was really impressive.
I'll tell you.
Thanks. Well, I love words.
Yeah.
I love words.
And you're in publishing. It's crazy how things work out. I love it. Well, thank you for your time. We're grateful to have you here, and hopefully we'll have a chance to have you on again.
Oh, thank you.
100%.
Thank you.
Quickly wanted to say before you wrap up is I've talked to Malcolm for hundreds of hours, and I can tell you there's no difference between him on this podcast and everyday moment. He is always hitting me with new words, vocabularies that I've never heard before, and I'm always fascinated, like, where did that come from? Like, where's that in the file bin? And so, you've mentioned that to me before, but I feel the exact same way about you, where it's like, where do you pull this out of? Where's the knowledge coming from? But I guess when you do Toastmasters for 10 years, when you do all these speaking experience, it just becomes a natural thing about you, where you know how to formulate a sentence to catch someone's curiosity and use the right words and implement them. But that's experience now. So now we can wrap it up. So thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
You're welcome.
your time, though. So,
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.